Welcome to this episode of The Leader Within. I'm excited to introduce Diana Trang, a black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, community leader, social entrepreneur, and the owner of Satori YYC. Traditionally, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu is a male-dominated sport, and it is considered one of the most difficult sports to get a black belt in. So as one of the first female pioneers of the sport in Alberta, Diana has faced her fair share of challenges on her journey to achieving a black belt, and it is a testament to her resilience. Join us as Diana draws parallels between the skills acquired in martial arts and the benefits in life and business. Not only have these skills empowered her, but they've also enabled her to empower others and encourage them to embrace life's challenges and unleash their potential. You might be asking yourself, how does martial arts help to unlock one's full potential? There are a number of ways, including developing discipline and perseverance, building mental and physical strength, and having a space for self-improvement, goal setting, and self-expression. So get ready to be inspired and motivated as Diana shares her learnings in hopes of helping you unlock your full potential. All right, Diana, well, thank you so much for joining me here because I think you have a very interesting story. You grew up in a small town, eventually left, and then landed a job at one of the biggest consulting firms here in Canada. Accounting, okay. And then you took some time off and you went to Brazil to train in Jiu Jitsu, and then eventually competed internationally, did very well. Came back, decided maybe this corporate life isn't really for me. Started multiple business endeavors. And as a first generation Canadian, I had to highlight that because I think some of the things that you might have to battle with as you navigate through your journey, that plays a huge role, right?
Yeah.
So can you share a little bit about your story?
Yeah, so you got that in a nutshell really nicely. I grew up in a small town, like you said, first generation Canadian. My parents came here from Vietnam as refugees, late 70s. And I grew up in a small town with like 6,000 people. There wasn't a whole lot there. So when I left St. Paul when I was 18, went to school, I right away looked for a hobby, and I was looking for something new, found jiu-jitsu, had no idea what it was, didn't have any friends that did it, but somehow I was drawn to it, ended up showing up, and it's just kind of been falling into place from there. But yeah, I basically was looking for something new to do, and from there I found jiu-jitsu and I was hooked from my first day. And fortunately at the time, in 2001, at that time, there wasn't very much jiu-jitsu happening. So I think back to that time and I compare to how it is now, where jiu-jitsu has grown in popularity, and there's just so many jiu-jitsu gyms now, where as a female coming into a jiu-jitsu gym where it's predominantly males, I mean, even in Brazil, it's like that, it can be really overwhelming. But for me, I was fortunate that when I started, there was really nobody. And so I kind of got to grow with it and be comfortable with it as the class kind of grew, being kind of the first person to come for the class, and then kind of growing kind of grassroots from there. And then, yeah, I mean, I always did it for me. I always enjoyed it from day number one. Obviously liked the challenge, and there was just so much to learn. But from there, I just kind of moved through competition. I really enjoyed that aspect of it. For me at the beginning, it was very much sport-based, hobby-based, competition-based. Went to Brazil, which really was my first introduction into competing with women that were actually in my weight category. Because again, going back to 2001 times, there wasn't very much jiu-jitsu happening, let alone women. Not very many competitions. And sometimes I had to compete against men because there were no women, especially at the very beginning. And even up until now, there wasn't many opportunities to go with people that were actually in my weight category. So going to Brazil was a big eye-opener for me, because I got to actually see how my game played against people that were my size, my experience, instead of, going against a man that was bigger than me, or a woman that was, X many pounds heavier than me. And from there, I really, like Brazil really, being in the motherland really solidified it for me, how much I really loved it. And then coming back and then starting to coach, I saw, yeah, this is my passion work. This is what I'm passionate about, and I can make it my work. Yeah.
And were your parents at any point in time like, hold up, Diana? Because traditionally growing up Asian, right, our parents are like, go be an accountant, doctor, lawyer, engineer. Like they're not really sure what a coach or like martial artist is, right?
I think that my parents started to really accept it, like actually accept what I did, even though I'm not 100% sure that they even know exactly what I do. You know, they know I do martial arts, but yeah, I've never actually shown them a video of what I do. And I know they've definitely not like searched what's Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. You know, I don't even know if my mom can say Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. She just like, when we speak in Vietnamese, she's just like, oh, your martial art. She's like, your martial art that you do. Oh, you're doing your martial art. But it wasn't until I actually started coaching as my job and it became my business that she started to accept it more. Because when I would say, oh, I'm going to, you know, here, or I'm going there for a competition, they'd always be like, do you have to go? Like, do you want to spend your money on that? Like, you should save your money. Like, you don't have to, you know, like, or she'd be like, oh, your muscles, like your muscles are getting kind of big. Do you want big muscles like that? You know, like typical, I don't know, Asian, I'm sure you relate to all that, where it's like, you don't need to be really muscular, or you should just save your money and save it for something else that's more useful. Right. But I think now she understands, especially the self-defense side of it, you know, how it's helping the community, how it helps me, how it empowers me, how it empowers my kids, how it empowers other people's kids, right? And so they understand it now, but it wasn't really until I made that kind of crossover into, this is my job and I love my job and I can help with my job and I'm strong and being strong is great, right? And I actually do really like my muscles and I'm proud of that, right? But for my mom especially, she, you know, growing up in old school Vietnam, right? It's like, that's not usually what they're striving for, right? I want to be athletic and I want to, you know, be able to beat people up, right? It's just, it's very different way of thinking, but I think that they appreciate it now. My dad's more chill. He's just like, cool. Yeah. Nice work.
That's pretty cool that your mom at least can say martial arts. My mom thinks it's Kung Fu. I think she just thinks it's similar, but
I think at a time she might have said Taekwondo because actually growing up in St. Paul, there wasn't very much. Like, I mean, there are the typical sports, right? But there was only Taekwondo. Like, that's the only martial art you could do in St. Paul. Maybe it's changed now, but I think it's actually still just Taekwondo. Maybe karate. I don't know. But
I guess it's all the same to them, right?
Yeah, it is.
And it can be scary leaving the corporate world, right? Because it's more predictable income, and you know, like biweekly you'll have your paycheck, and then with business and stuff, it comes highs and lows, right? So, what would you say has been one of your biggest tips that you can offer others transitioning out of the corporate world and looking for their own endeavor?
Well, I just think that, you know, there's different kinds of people, right? I think some people, they work in their passion. Their work is their passion and they do their passion work and they love it. They're successful at it, or they're working towards being successful at it, but that's what they want to do. They want their work as their passion. And then I think there's other people who are passionate about their work. They're passionate about being good at their work and they find contentment in that, making good money, doing it, being successful and being happy with being good at their job, and they do their passion outside of their work and they don't get paid for that, you know? So I don't think that, you know, just because I've chosen this as my passion work, that you can't also be happy working a corporate job. But I think for anybody that is working a corporate job that wants to transition into something that's very not corporate, right? Not your typical 9 to 5, I think just be rooted in your passion, you know, like, obviously there's steps to success and be comfortable with taking one step at a time. Of course, we all as entrepreneurs try to plan for success as quickly as we can, but know that most entrepreneurs are stepping stones before you get there, and be okay with that. But if you have your passion as your driver and you know whatever it is, whether it is an actual 9 to 5 or whatever you're transitioning to, just be rooted in that which you want. Right? If that's what you're desiring as your job, the transition's always going to be easy. Actually, the transition was not hard for me. Hard in the sense that I knew I wanted it and I knew I wanted to do it. Doesn't mean it was easy, but me making the choice to do it was easy. It was an easy decision, but there were still stepping stones to get there. So be patient, I guess. Long story short, be patient with it, and you know, whether you're a write it out person or a think it out person, there has to be steps towards it, right? Especially when you're shifting from corporate where you might be making X amount. And, you know, I always played it safe in a sense where I always made sure I had another kind of safety net as I chose to take those stepping stones, so that I felt more able to take each step. You know, so sometimes I had to compromise some things so that I could make sure that my ease into it was a little bit easier. Yeah.
Makes sense. And with entrepreneurship comes highs and lows, right? So how have you been able to stay resilient and agile, especially when life throws you the curveball like the pandemic recently, right?
Again, just going back to why, right? We had kind of like a short, quick conversation about Simon Sinek, right?
Yes.
With why, and that's my biggest driver, which also includes my kids, my own passion, right? Is always like, why do I want to choose this job? Why is corporate no longer for me? I still actually really appreciate all the corporate time that I had. It added value to what I do now, even though it's different. Just appreciation, gratitude for what you're able to do. The fact that we live in Canada, that we have all these opportunities, that we can even do these things, right? But yeah, so with the highs and lows, it's just, again, being rooted in your why. Right? So why did I choose to do jujitsu as my job after I had my kids? Why? It creates more time for me to spend with my family. My why, the community work, helping people, having like an actual purpose outside of what I'm actually doing. It's not just the what or the how I'm doing it, but it's actually the why, the inner core of how I base all my decisions. So I think when you go through those ebbs and flows of, okay, this is hard, just remember your why. Like, why am I doing this? Why am I choosing to be patient right now? Why do I desire this in my life? And then that'll kind of get you through. And then the patience part, where it's not like overnight. I think that's, jujitsu, I always say, is just like that parallel into our lives, right? You can't do jujitsu, you can't be an entrepreneur and just wish for instant gratification, right? You will not succeed, right? If you're expecting instant gratification, I'm going to just be good right now. You have to be patient. You have to understand why you're doing it. Why am I here? Why am I on the mats? Why am I training? Same thing with whether it's your entrepreneurship too, or your highs and lows of entrepreneurship, or jujitsu, right? Why am I here? Why am I a white belt? Why is it taking me this long? It's just, I'm here because I want to learn, and it's not how long it's going to take me. It's just the right now. I want to be present right now. And this is, why am I doing it in this right now? Where is it going to take me? Don't worry about the future. Just do right now. Yeah.
I love that you kind of tie jujitsu into like your personal life and those intertwine. And for those who don't know, when it comes to jujitsu, it's actually really hard to get your black belt compared to some other martial arts. It takes a lot longer, right? On average, it's around 10 or more years, depending on life circumstances.
For sure.
And it's a lot about technique, discipline, and it's human chess, right? And I know you mentioned on your website that it's more than just self-defense, it's about community. So from white belt to black belt, what would you say has been one of your biggest learnings? And how is it tying into how you approach life and business?
The biggest learning?
Yeah.
Learning. How can I pick one thing? I think kind of connecting to what I said, where, there is always this parallel into life, and how it's helped me is that it helps me to problem solve, right? In jiu-jitsu, when we're on the mats, we're always problem solving, and it doesn't always go our way. We can be really good one day at one thing, and the next day, different factors, the way you're feeling, the amount of sleep you got, the training partner you get, how they slept, how they've been training. It always changes. I mean, generally you have your core, your fundamentals, right? When you've been training for a long time, but it's still up in the air. It's maybe my day today, it's maybe your day tomorrow, right? And so what it's taught me is resiliency and adaptability. And that's the parallel into my life, when I have had days where, when I started, trying to start moving into coaching women was not easy. Easy because I know I wanted to do it and I knew my purpose and my why, but it was not easy because it's not the easiest group to convince, right, to come out, because it is very daunting for someone that hasn't done martial arts before, hasn't done like a close contact sport, right? Generally, we haven't wrestled as females, like growing up. There's always exceptions, but generally it's just not how we move. Whereas with boys or males, right, it's just in their makeup, right?
Yeah.
And so it wasn't an easy class to grow, but I knew, if you build it, they will come. And I just remember thinking, I remember the first day I had my class, my very first women's class, there was one woman, and then there was two, and then there was one, and then there was three, and then there was one. It took a really long time to grow, and it was discouraging at moments, right? Just like jiu-jitsu, sometimes you're having a great day, other days you feel really discouraged, you're on pure defense, things aren't working out for you, but you go back to, okay, life isn't easy, jiu-jitsu's not easy, life's not easy, right? But can I keep showing up for myself? Can I keep showing up for my community? Can I keep problem solving? And it really, I started when I was 19, and I always think, I wonder what I would be like, I would have been like, how I would be today if I had started when I was a kid, right? But I know that we are all on our own path, and I'm glad that I started when I started, and maybe things would have been different and I would have maybe ended up the same, right? But it's just taught me so much in that it's built up that resiliency within me, or just like outside if I see wrongdoing, right? When self-defense or violence or whatever, it's given me a confidence that I don't know if I would have had the same confidence if it was not for jiu-jitsu, right? And it's like sometimes we don't feel confident on the mats, and we push through it, right? With that kind of silver lining that we know is going to come, or that we feel some days and then we don't feel other days, but we know that nobody gets worse from showing up, right? We only get better. Yeah.
I really appreciate that you've taken a focus on women, especially in such a male-dominated sport. And for those who don't know, you are one of the female pioneers here in Alberta for Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. So for those who are in a male-dominated industry or a male-dominated sport, like, what has helped you increase representation and just, again, bring these women together? And
I think just be authentic. When I share in the ways that I do, whether it's, I meet a mom at my kid's school, or I'm talking to somebody at the gym, or wherever it may be, I think this just goes across any industry or anything really in life, is just be authentic, right? And I think that when you have the right intention, people will understand your intention. And so even though, going back to where I was saying, it wasn't easy, I felt discouraged at the beginning because of how long it was taking to grow. But I knew deep down inside that it was going to grow, and I just need to keep showing up. I need to keep spreading the seed, like talking about it and getting people to see, like, yeah, you can do it, and women can be strong, and women can do this. This is meant for us, really. That it translates. People get that. They understand whether you're being authentic or not. And so if you just be authentic in whatever you do, people will be attracted to that. The people that are interested in that, right? There is a saying, like, jiu-jitsu's for everyone, or jiu-jitsu's not for everyone. I think it can be for everyone, but maybe at different times in our life, right? But I absolutely think that it can be for everyone, but you have to choose to see what is the benefit that you're getting from it. Because some people may be attracted just for the self-defense. I gravitated towards self-defense, but that wasn't my intention when I first started. And so you just need one thing, right? Like one driver. And then the beauty of life is that it moves you in a direction you have no idea. Just like your jiu-jitsu, right? You have no idea what's going to happen when you show up. But you show up, and for years, you may not know where it's going to take you, but it will take you somewhere, right? But you have to still maintain that integrity in it, and maintain that honesty with yourself and authenticity, and just be true to what it is that drove you there in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And not only are you like a master jiu-jitsu and spend a lot of time like doing this, like you're an active community leader, right? Because that's something you're very passionate about. You're learning Muay Thai, Judo, Capoeira, and then you picked up hunting recently, and you're a mom of two. So how do you stay organized, or like what's a productivity hack that you've kind of picked up then?
I'm just a busybody by nature, and I think my parents, I'm a product of my environment. Like I get that from my mom and my dad. They're just constantly, they've always been that their whole lives. And so I'm a product of my parents. So I get that strong work ethic from them. And whether it's my work or just my pleasure, right? Like I love learning. And so I think it helps me, right? Like it helps me to see that I'm not one dimensional, and that I can pull and take. Obviously, I started all those other martial arts. I started those other martial arts after I got my black belt, which I wanted to get really good at one thing first, but it's adding value to me. I think of it as professional development. It's adding value to me as a self-defense instructor, as a coach, even in my, jiu-jitsu, even though it's different martial arts, I'm taking little things. It's helping me to be more dynamic. And in that, off the mats, it helps me be more dynamic outside too, because I have to juggle all of that, right? My kids, I always say, are such big drivers for me too. I don't know whether I would have chosen entrepreneurship so early. I was in my 30s. I was 30 when I had my oldest, but they drove me because I wanted to spend more time with them. And so it pushed me towards my passion, where maybe I would have wanted to do it, but I wouldn't have done it then. I would have done it later or something, you know. But it just helps me to just grow as a human. It helps me to grow as a human. And I like that. Not that I like not being good at things, right? But there's a humility to it where it's like, you know what? I'm not just good at everything, right? We have to like check our ego, like we always say in jiu-jitsu, right? I'm going to check my ego and I'm going to make myself feel uncomfortable and then be comfortable in the uncomfortable. You know, jiu-jitsu taught me that. And I love it. It's like I yearn for that feeling. Like as I go to Muay Thai now and capoeira, it's like I know I'm not good, but I love it because I remember. Actually, I've been doing jiu-jitsu for so long, I don't remember sucking at jiu-jitsu, right? It's like, I'm sure I sucked at jiu-jitsu at the beginning, but I've been doing it so long now that I only remember being good, right? It's just like, I only remember being strong. I'm sure at some point I was weak, right? But we have our days, but it's humbling. It's so humbling and it's very nourishing to know that you can start here and end up here as long as you put in the work.
I think it's beautiful that you are able to incorporate like so much dynamic like aspects to your life and how you bring your children along. Because I know sometimes like you'll share with us like, yeah, like, you know, sometimes I feel guilty as a parent when I'm like bringing them everywhere, but you make it work. And I think it showcases to your kids that, hey, like, you know what, we're going to be busy in life. There's always going to be a lot going on. It's just you adapt and you flow with it. And I think that's a consistent theme with a lot of our conversations. So on a side note, when it comes to your journey and success in general, who are some leaders or mentors that have played a key role in helping you along your journey?
There's many. I think if I have to pick one, am I picking one?
You can pick one or two, whichever one's a pick.
Yeah. I think number one, you know, is my parents. I know that's a common answer for a lot of people, but it's the truth in my case. You know, I think when it comes to work ethic across different ways of being, right? Like it's a huge part of how you present everything that you do, right? So I think my parents, you know, immigrants, refugees coming from Vietnam, coming here and starting their life over, they had to really dedicate a lot of themselves to that endeavor, right? And so just having my parents working as hard as they did growing up, just modeling for me what it takes to succeed, right? Which they did succeed. I didn't know it as a kid. You know, I didn't realize it until I became an adult. And even in my early adulthood, I don't think I would have been able to articulate that. But as I reflect being older and also as a mom now too, I really do think that I take that part of their parenting, you know, for me when I was a kid into my adulthood and into like the way that I coach and the way that I operate my business and all that is just having a strong work ethic and showing up like each day and just getting it done.
I think that's beautiful. And I can definitely relate from that immigrant parents' perspective, right? Because you see them grind day after day and they never take breaks. And I'm like, I don't know how you can do it and take care of your family and everything.
Yeah.
And how about from the corporate and business perspective? Like, what are attributes of leaders who have positively helped you with your success?
Yeah, I same thing. Like it's hard to pick one person because there's been so many people all along the way that really inspire me. But I do remember a specific. It's not a person I've ever met, actually, but it was a podcast listening to Tony Robbins. And, you know, I remember from a young age wanting to help people, but not quite knowing how I wanted to help, but recognizing that when I helped people, I felt good about it. And that I wanted to do that somehow, you know, and I had a lot of different jobs before I found my passion work and this job that I do now. But I remember that there was a bit of a disconnect for me at one point where I thought I needed to put a lot of eggs in one basket in one sense to be able to help people. Like I needed to run my own charity. I needed to run my own nonprofit. I needed to have this in order to do that. And it actually hindered my ability to help people. It actually stunted my ability to help because I thought I needed to do it on a massive, big scale. And then there was this moment, I remember I was listening to Tony Robbins, everything that he has to share, his wisdom is, I just find very, very useful and inspiring. But I was listening to one of his podcasts and he was talking about his story, which is a whole nother part of it too, is sharing your story and just being authentic in that sense and not necessarily needing to portray a certain image, right? Is just be who you are and people connect to authenticity in that way. And I really appreciate that about him because he's so successful, but he's also authentic. And he talked about his story of growing up in poverty and just not even being able to have food, and, you know, knocking door to door to ask for food. And then one day when he was, I think, 11 years old, somebody came to his door on Thanksgiving and brought him and his family a bunch of groceries. And it was like a moment for him where he remembers that people are good and that you can help. And one small gesture can do so much. And it inspired him as a young kid to one day he said to himself, you know, I'm gonna help people one day. And he did help people. He has, and he does help people, but he started on a very small scale. And it can be, well, it can be something as small as showing up and buying groceries for somebody on their, leaving groceries on their doorstep. And from that day forward, actually, I recognized that. And I thought, you know what, instead of needing to have this charity or be the head of this and have this, you know, organization, I can do it on a small scale. I can create initiatives. I can just help somebody with their fees for jiu-jitsu. I can, you know, small things, but small things become big things. And I think that's, in my, just in my journey as an entrepreneur, I think that's one pivotal moment for me that I will never forget, because it was from that moment that I decided to start just running initiatives through Satori and helping people just day by day. And it snowballs into more. And then you don't know how where it's gonna lead you in the future. So I think that's something to take forward for sure.
That's one of the things that I respect most about you, because looking at the community partnerships that you've built, the amount of volunteer that you've invested into the community, whether it's like self-defense or yoga, just overall promoting well-being, like I think that's absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
So from a coaching perspective, when it comes to unleashing an individual or a team's potential, what does that look like from your perspective?
I think, well, tying in everything, right, that we just talked about, but being authentic, you know, it's something that has really made me such a better individual, you know, because even though I'm in this role of coach, you know, professor, I'm leading people, it's helped me to grow myself as well. But by showing up, one, and being authentic, right? But I think also is just creating that community where it allows other people to be themselves when they come here too. And then that allows them to have the comfort to be able to be themselves and then unleash their potential. But I think when we create safe spaces for people to be where they can be themselves and they feel welcome, you know, I appreciate that in the places that I've been when I started jiu-jitsu, when I started any martial art, or just anywhere I go, right? We appreciate welcoming environments. And when we're comfortable in the places that we are, then we can excel, right? And then that, I put a lot of intention into that, into creating like a family, a cohesive like community environment, because I want that for people. And I want people to have that comfort, but also because it's about showing up, right? When you show up for yourself, you're also showing up for people. This is the thing with jiu-jitsu that I love, is that it's very much a team sport, but it's also an individual thing. But the more that we can be comfortable in that space together and create an environment for people to feel welcome and to excel, they will excel, right? And they do it together as a group, as a team, and they also do it individually too. So it's this beautiful kind of dichotomy that happens here. Yeah.
And you've built such a beautiful community, because like you said, you allow people from all different ages, backgrounds to come in, and everyone feels like they can fit right in, right? And they're not intimidated by that. And with that comes a lot of work of making sure that you allow the right people into your gym, right? So have you had to deal with like maybe a situation where there's like that bad apple?
No, that's the thing I love about jiu-jitsu. And I just see this in martial arts in general, actually. And I speak from my experience, right? So of course I've tried lots of things, but I think, again, goes back to authenticity. Just be yourself, right? And then you are what you attract what you are. And I think when we can gather in a space with all different walks of life, ages, people, backgrounds, cultures, we all at least have one thing in common, which is we're trying to challenge ourselves and we're trying to progress and grow. And sometimes people don't even know that, right? But we all come here, we all at least have one thing in common, right? And it's about just showing up. And then from there, everything just falls into place. But I've never had, again, I think that's just the whole, you create what you create what you are, you create what you want, and then it's that law of attraction where you're going to attract the people that are meant, that that connect to that same type of energy, right? Because for sure there's been people that come and it's like, okay, maybe jiu-jitsu is not right for them. There's also been times when people come and it's jiu-jitsu is not right for them in that moment of their lives, right? And it might not be the environment, it just might be where they are in their lives at that time, right? So there has to still be, we can create as much of a welcoming environment for anybody, you know, be top notch 100% for welcoming, but you also need to be in the right place too to be ready to receive that. And I always think of that like it's like a ripeness, right? It's like, but again, it goes to who, and that's the team sport part that I think I've always loved, like team things as an adult. I started when I was 19, but I wish I realized that when I was younger, that I love team things, right? Because it's individual, but it's together. Is that you are who surrounds you too. And so I think even when you're not quite ready or it's very overwhelming, you come into the right space and the people help to elevate you too. So I think I really haven't had an issue with anybody coming in here where it's like, okay, you're a bad apple, I don't think you belong here. It's like there's so many different personalities, as you know, and we've managed to find a way to make it work. Yeah.
And it's actually pretty cool to see how you've leveraged all these different personalities, and because it's different learning styles, different teaching styles that come into here. So then for the newest person, it's like they might not jive fully with that one person initially, but then they always have someone else who's willing to come in and teach them and help them progress and grow.
People overcome, right? Like, and I just think there's always that parallel. That's why I just love, and I wish I could bottle it up and give it away to people, you know, because you have to experience it. You have to stay here long enough to be able to experience it, to know it. And then when you know it, you never forget it. And then when you know it, you want to share it with everybody, right? But you have to experience it. But it's so true. You know, you come in here and maybe, yeah, the person that you're like, I don't know, maybe the person's just like you, right? And you don't like it, you know, or the energy, not that they were a bad person or anything, but you're like, okay, maybe you're a competitive person and that person's beat you up that day. And you're like, I don't like it, right? But that's what you need. And maybe that becomes your best friend, right? But it's just, there's always that parallel of jiu-jitsu in life and the way that we show up for ourselves on the mats, the way that we take in information, the way that we work hard. I feel like it's, for me anyways, speaking from my experience, it's how I show up in my life too, right? Showing up still when you're tired, showing up still when you have things to do, showing up and choosing to get those things done outside of everything that you have going on, right? It's just like working hard, not giving up, just
That's a great reminder about the parallel, because even when you alluded before about like how jiu-jitsu helps you with problem solving, and then now you talk about leadership from being authentic, right? And creating that welcoming environment for that like diverse group. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's a journey. Just because you reach a black belt one day or wherever you are, it doesn't mean that you don't still struggle, right? And it's this constant reminder that you need humility in life and you need humility in jiu-jitsu, right? Because some days you're operating at 100%, some days you're operating at 60, but you have to be strategic about how you choose to move and how you choose to be and all that, and how you choose to show up.
Well, thank you for sharing that passion, because I definitely feel it, and the community probably sees it too through all the work that you do there.
Thanks, Angela.
And as we slowly wrap up our conversation, what is one thing that you're most excited about, whether it's in your personal life or in business in general, and how can people stay in touch with you?
What am I most excited about right now?
Yeah.
What am I most excited about right now? I like an event or just
in general.
What I'm most excited about right now in my personal life, like outside of work, etc., is trying to get to an international competition again, because COVID did a number on in the jiu-jitsu community. We've been out of it for a little while now, but it's still been difficult to travel to certain countries, you know, and do certain international competitions. And unfortunately, fortunately that, you know, I have to go somewhere overseas to get, you know, people in my division. But unfortunately, I have to go further away to get to a competition. But I do want to plan that this year and get out there for an international competition in the future, near future.
Well, I'm excited to see like how far you'll take that. And like I said, like, thank you so much for creating that representation for women, visible minorities, etc., because I think it gives confidence to others as a byproduct of that.
Thank you for what you're doing. I think it's important for us, right, to just raise awareness on that. And I think, just to spread awareness on it and show that it's these things, what we've talked about, are possible. Just got to show up.
For sure. And what's the best way for people to stay connected to you then?
Probably my website or social media. Like I think most of the things are on social media, but website as well, like satoriyyc.com.
Awesome. And I'll link everything below. Thank you so much again for sharing.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, your journey, your insights and everything. And I'm excited for people to experience your self-defense seminars, your classes in person. Like you've built such a great community and everyone's just so welcoming. So.
Thank you. That's the other thing that's coming up that I also am excited about is the next charity self-defense and collaborating with another social impact business that's going to come out. And then we're going to kind of double whammy it and then help a lot of folks out with that. So it's another thing to be excited about.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you again. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. I appreciate your time and attention. And I can't wait for you to stay connected on the next episode.